Night does not fall suddenly in a medieval town. It seeps into the streets, settles into stone, and exposes the work no one wants to see. When the last bell fades, survival does not rest. It begins its hardest labor. You are standing inside a medieval town at the precise moment when daylight releases its grip. The sun has already slipped behind uneven rooftops, but its warmth still clings faintly to the stones beneath your feet. These stones are worn smooth in some places and broken in others, shaped not by design but by centuries of footsteps, hooves, and cartwheels grinding against them without mercy. They were never meant to be comfortable. They were meant to last. The air feels thick now, heavier than it did an hour ago. Smoke from countless hearth fires hangs low, trapped between leaning timber-framed houses. Beneath it drifts the unmistakable scent of damp wool, never fully dried no matter how close it hangs to the fire. And underneath everything else is a sourness that takes a moment to recognize, because it is everywhere. Human waste, animal dung, rotting scraps from kitchens and market stalls, spilled ale soaked into dirt and stone. This smell is not a failure of the town. It is proof that the town is alive. Somewhere nearby, a bell finishes ringing curfew. The final note does not end cleanly. It trembles, stretches, and fades into the night as if the metal itself is exhausted. Doors close, shutters are drawn, but the town does not sleep. It only changes hands. You pull your cloak tighter without thinking. That instinct matters. In this world, hesitation costs warmth, and warmth is never free. Nothing here is. You step forward into a narrow street guided by torchlight that flickers against wooden walls darkened by age and smoke. Above you, upper floors lean inward so closely they almost touch, creating the illusion that the buildings are watching you pass. Light reveals faces briefly, then lets them disappear again. Privacy here is rare. Anonymity is more common. Something splashes suddenly into the gutter nearby. You step aside on instinct, heart jumping before your mind has time to understand why. A moment later, the reason becomes clear. A chamber pot has been emptied from an upper window without warning, its contents joining the slow-moving stream that runs down the center of the street. This is not unusual. Medieval towns do not have underground sewage systems. Waste flows openly, guided by gravity and habit rather than pipes. Avoiding the gutter is not about disgust. It is about survival. Leather creaks as someone brushes past you. A donkey snorts farther down the street. Somewhere in the distance, metal rings against metal as a smith continues working long past sunset. Deadlines do not respect darkness, and hunger does not pause for nightfall. Bakers are finishing their final loaves before dawn. Watchmen pace the walls, their footsteps measured and deliberate. And then there are the others. The workers whose jobs are restricted to night because daylight would bring too many questions. The smell grows stronger as you walk. Your senses adjust quickly because they must. In some towns, pigs roam freely through the streets, acting as living waste disposal. Children learn early to dodge them as carefully as carts. You see them now, snouts low, grunting softly as they move past, doing a job no one acknowledges. Even animals have roles here. The street narrows further, becoming intimate in a way that feels confining rather than comforting. Torchlight reveals doorways people avoid looking at directly. You notice how eyes avert themselves from certain thresholds, how respect and disgust share the same physical space. Jobs here are not just work. They are identity. They determine where you live, who will marry you, how close others stand when they speak to you. Historians debate whether social stigma attaches more strongly to the labor itself or to the physical proximity that labor has to filth, death, and the realities of the human body. Tonight, you do not need to resolve that debate. You can feel it under your boots. A man passes carrying a bucket with a lid tied tightly with rope. His shoulders are tense, his steps careful. You realize quickly that this is not fear. It is professionalism. Spilling would mean ridicule at best, punishment at worst. In many towns, fines are issued for making the streets dirtier than they already are. The irony would be amusing if the consequences were not so real. You pause near a crossroads where a small shrine glows faintly with candlelight. Someone has left bread there, perhaps for the saints, perhaps for luck. Faith clings to everything in this world because so little is predictable. Disease arrives without warning. Fire leaps from roof to roof in minutes. A single failed harvest can hollow an entire town. Work becomes the thin line between survival and disappearance. That is why the strange jobs exist at all. They are not curiosities. They are necessities. The ground beneath your feet feels slick. Earlier rain has mixed with whatever the gutter carried, creating a thin film that reflects torchlight like oil. You adjust your pace. You learn quickly. Medieval people adapt fast because they must. Childhood ends early. Labor begins as soon as hands can grip and carry. There is no concept of a useless job. Even the most unpleasant role serves a purpose. Low voices drift toward you. Two figures stand beside a wooden hatch set directly into the street. Coins exchange hands. One lifts the hatch just long enough to empty a bucket. The smell blooms briefly, then dissolves back into the larger night. You understand something important now. This town breathes differently after dark. Many medieval cities enforce curfews not only for safety, but to control movement, trade, and labor. Certain jobs are legally restricted to nighttime hours. The law does not erase them. It simply pushes them into shadow. You are walking through the town's hidden systems now, not the face it presents during market hours. You think briefly of your own world. Garbage trucks humming before sunrise. Sewage hidden beneath pavement. The difference is not the existence of unpleasant work. It is how visible it feels when you are standing here, smelling it, hearing it, knowing the person beside you cannot simply go home and wash it away. Laughter drifts from a tavern farther up the street. Life continues in pockets. Joy survives even here, but the sound fades quickly, swallowed by stone and wood. Night compresses everything. It makes the world feel smaller, closer, harder to escape. Tonight is not about kings or battles. It is about the people who make those stories possible. The ones who clean, haul, scrape, burn, test, and risk themselves so others can pretend not to think about it. You take another step forward, deeper into the town, already sensing that the strangest jobs are not strange at all once you understand the need behind them. They are simply human responses to a difficult world. The street slopes downward now, away from taverns and warmth, toward a heavier part of town. The air thickens, pressing against your face as if the ground itself is breathing out. You hear it before you see it. The slow scrape of wood on stone. The soft slosh of liquid that should never slosh. This is where the night work truly begins. The street slopes downward more noticeably now, pulling you away from the faint warmth of taverns and into a quieter, heavier part of town. The torchlight grows thinner here, stretched farther apart, leaving long intervals of shadow between pools of flame. The air changes as you descend. It thickens, damp and sour, as if the ground itself is exhaling what it has absorbed all day. You hear the sound before you see its source. Wood scraping against stone. Liquid shifting inside a container that should not hold liquid. You slow your steps instinctively. At the edge of a small courtyard stand several wooden privies, their doors warped and swollen from years of use. The wood is darkened, not by age alone, but by moisture and constant contact. Beneath these structures lie cess pits, hidden from polite conversation and daylight. They collect everything a household produces and never wants to see again. This is where the gong farmers work. A mainstream historical fact settles into place quietly. In medieval towns, human waste is stored in cesspits and must be removed by hand, usually at night by specialized laborers. There is no flushing, no underground system carrying it away unseen. Removal is manual, physical, and unavoidable. One of the men crouches now, a lantern hooked to a nail driven into the privy wall. The flame trembles slightly as he lifts a heavy lid. The smell hits you fully this time. Sharp, eye-watering, immediate. Your body reacts before your mind does. tightening your throat and forcing your breath shallow. But you do not step back. You stay. That feels important. The man lowers a bucket carefully into the pit, not rushing, not grimacing. He has done this before. He will do it again tomorrow night. His movements are slow and deliberate, guided by habit rather than hesitation. When he hauls the bucket up, muscles strain beneath rough wool. You notice how methodical he is. Spilling is not just unpleasant. It can bring fines, lawsuits, or even violence from angry neighbors. Another truth settles in quietly. This job is dangerous. Toxic gases can build up in cesspits. Workers sometimes collapse without warning. People know this. That knowledge does not stop the work. It only makes the men cautious, superstitious, precise. A small but telling detail drifts through your mind. Some Gong farmers keep a candle close to the pit opening. If the flame flickers or goes out, they know the air below can kill them. The lantern light catches the man's face as he straightens. He looks older than his years. Tired, but focused. Gong farmers often live on the edges of town, not by choice, but by pressure. Their work keeps everyone healthier, yet they are treated as unclean, avoided during daylight hours. Historians debate whether this social distance is driven more by fear of disease or by moral disgust tied to bodily waste. Standing here, watching the careful lift and pour of the bucket, it feels like both. Nearby, another man waits beside a cart. The wheels are wrapped in leather to muffle sound. Night work values quiet. Noise draws attention. Attention brings complaints. Complaints bring fines. The bucket is emptied into a larger barrel and sealed tightly. Tomorrow it will be hauled beyond the town walls. The waste will fertilize fields. The fields will grow grain. The grain will return as bread. The circle remains unbroken, even if no one wants to think about it. You imagine people waking in the morning to cleaner courtyards, thanking God for health and good fortune. They will not thank the men who made that possible. You feel a tightening in your chest, a modern sympathy sliding backward through time. The ground here is slick. You adjust your footing again. This posture, this constant adjustment, is another lesson. Survival here depends on awareness as much as strength. The Gong farmer wipes his hands on straw, then on his trousers. There is no soap waiting, no clean water nearby. Soap exists in the medieval world, but it is expensive and rarely used for personal hygiene. Cleanliness is relative. Enough is enough. You walk alongside the cart for a moment as it begins to roll. The wood creaks softly. The smell follows you like a shadow. You realize this job often pays better than many others. It has to. Few volunteer for it. Money compensates where honor does not. That complicates the picture. Disgust and necessity wrestle constantly here. You glance up at the darkened windows above. Families sleep unaware of how close this labor moves beneath their dreams. A child might wake briefly at the sound of wheels, then drift back to sleep. That child might grow up to mock these men in daylight, or might join them out of need. The line is thin. The work continues without ceremony. No prayers. No speeches. Just lift, pour, seal, move on. The repetition feels almost meditative. There is something quietly calming about watching a task done well, even when it is unpleasant. Cool night air carries the smell away more easily than daytime heat ever could. That is not an accident. Town laws often require cesspits to be emptied after dark. Practicality shapes morality here. Decency follows convenience. The cart rolls forward and you step aside, letting it pass. Clean air replaces the worst of the smell. Relief comes quickly, followed by a flicker of guilt. Someone else will breathe that air for hours yet. You turn away and follow the street as it begins to rise again, climbing toward a cluster of low buildings with wide doors and shuttered windows. The smell changes as you move. It is still sharp but warmer now, almost fermented. It clings to your clothes the way damp air does after rain. You hear splashing, not frantic, steady, rhythmic. This is the territory of the Fullers. You stop at the threshold of an open workshop. Inside, men and women stand knee-deep in large wooden vats. Their trousers are rolled high, tunics hitched up without ceremony. They stamp and shift their weight repeatedly, working thick cloth beneath the surface. The liquid is cloudy, pale, faintly foaming. You already know what it is, or at least part of it. Surviving craft manuals confirm that fullers use stale human urine to treat woolen cloth. The ammonia cleans and thickens the fibers, transforming rough fabric into something dense, weather-resistant, and warm. Without this process, cloaks, blankets, and hose would never function as intended. You wrinkle your nose instinctively, then relax. The smell is strong, but not hostile. It is the smell of work done correctly. One of the workers notices you watching. He does not smile. He does not scowl. He shifts his stance and continues stamping. Step, press, turn, step, press, turn. The sound of liquid sloshing against wood fills the room, accompanied by low conversation and the occasional laugh. Even here, surrounded by bodily byproducts, there is camaraderie. Town regulations often push fulling workshops toward the edges of residential areas or near rivers where water is plentiful. Some cities build communal fulling mills powered by water wheels to reduce labor. The work is essential but rarely welcome nearby. A lesser-known detail surfaces. Households sometimes save urine specifically for fullers, storing it in jars and selling it for a small fee. Children collect it. What feels embarrassing to you feels practical here. Nothing useful is wasted. You step inside carefully, avoiding splashes. The floor is slick, worn smooth by years of traffic. Wooden beams overhead are darkened by moisture and steam. Humidity settles on your skin, warm and heavy. It is easy to imagine standing here for hours, muscles aching, feet numb, mind drifting. Scholars debate how much fulling is done by foot versus tools like paddles or mechanical hammers. Evidence varies by region and century. What does not change is the physical intimacy of the job. Cloth is not treated at a distance. It is trampled, squeezed, coaxed into strength through contact. A pile of finished fabric rests near the wall. You reach out and touch it. It is dense, warm, surprisingly pleasant. That is the quiet magic of this work. The process is unpleasant. The result is comfort. A woman wrings out a length of cloth, twisting it with practiced ease. Water drips back into the vat in slow, patient streams. Her arms are strong, her expression calm. This is not misery. It is routine. That realization settles over you gently. Clothing signals status here. Color, thickness, quality speak before a person opens their mouth. Fullers sit at the hidden heart of that language. Without them, fine garments would not exist. Yet they rarely share in the prestige their work enables. The smell follows you briefly as you step back outside, then fades in the cooler air. Your tolerance has already shifted. What shocked you earlier now feels manageable. The town is teaching you recalibration. A breeze carries laughter from deeper inside the workshop. Life continues even ankle-deep in fermented liquid. You move on, understanding now that medieval survival is built not only on strength or faith, but on an unflinching relationship with the physical realities of the human body. The street ahead darkens again, leading toward water and reeds. Another job waits there, one that pulls you closer to the boundary between usefulness and discomfort. You follow the slope toward the edge of town. The street gives way to packed earth as you move closer to the edge of town. Stone disappears beneath your boots, replaced by ground that feels softer, less certain. Reeds whisper ahead, thin stalks brushing against one another, as if sharing quiet secrets. The air cools noticeably here, damp and heavy with the smell of stagnant water and mud. Frogs croak unevenly in the darkness. Insects hum just above the surface, their sound constant, almost soothing. You have reached the marshland. Most townspeople avoid this place unless necessity pulls them here. Paths are unreliable. Ground gives way without warning. Illness lingers in water that never fully moves on. And yet, This is where one of the most quietly unsettling jobs in the medieval world takes place. You step closer to the water's edge, placing each foot carefully. What looks solid may not be. A woman stands knee-deep in the shallows ahead of you, skirts hitched high, bare legs pale in the faint light. She is perfectly still. Too still. Only her eyes move, scanning the surface of the water. This is a leech collector. From surviving medical texts, you already know the purpose. Medieval medicine relies heavily on the theory of humors. Blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Illness is believed to come from imbalance. Removing blood is thought to restore harmony. Leeches are tools in this belief system, trusted and widely used. Physicians prescribe them. Apothecaries sell them. Patients submit to them. Supply, however, requires patience. You feel a chill watching her lower one leg slightly deeper into the water. Tiny ripples spread outward. The surface remains calm. It does not take long. She inhales sharply, then exhales, steadying herself. You know what she feels before you see it. A soft pull. Then another, almost delicate. Leeches attach silently, drawn by warmth and blood. Her body is not a victim here. It is bait. Nearby, a small basket floats on the surface, tethered with string. Inside, dark shapes writhe slowly. Already fed. Already valuable. Apothecaries will pay well for them. Physicians will use them confidently. Patients will trust them. Few will ever think about this marsh or the person standing in it at night. An often overlooked detail surfaces quietly. Some collectors use livestock instead, wading cows or horses into the water to attract leeches. Human legs allow precision. They let the collector detach each leech carefully without crushing it. That precision matters. A healthy leech can be reused multiple times. Historians still debate how widespread professional leech collecting truly was. In some regions, households gather them themselves. In others, specialists dominate the trade. What remains consistent is the risk. Cold seeps into bones here. Infection waits in water that never fully clears. Balance is uncertain. The woman reaches down and gently detaches each leech with a fingernail, practiced and unflinching. She drops them into the basket without hesitation. Her movements are efficient, almost tender. This is not revulsion. This is expertise. You notice pale scars on her legs. Small, circular marks left by previous bites. They are not hidden. They do not need to be. This work does not rely on secrecy, only tolerance. The marsh grows louder as you stand there longer. Water laps softly against her calves. A bird startles in the reeds, wings beating briefly before settling again. The night feels alive, aware of your presence. You find yourself standing very still, as if movement might disturb something fragile. Medical belief shapes action. Action shapes labor. Labor shapes lives. She lifts the basket from the water and ties it closed with a practiced knot. Water streams from her skin, darkening the mud at her feet. She does not look at you. She does not need to. This is not a performance. It is a transaction between body and environment. As you turn away from the marsh, your legs feel heavier, echoing her stillness. You carry with you the understanding that medicine here is not clean or distant. It is gathered with bare skin in cold water under an indifferent moon. The path leads back toward town. The sounds change first. Frogs and insects fade, replaced by softer, more unsettling noises of civilization at rest. Something skitters along stone. Something squeaks, then vanishes. The smell of grain appears, spilled and stale, layered beneath the familiar undercurrent of refuse. You have entered the territory of the rat catchers. You pause near a granary with thick wooden doors barred from the outside. Behind the planks, something moves, a dry rustling, like leaves stirred by breath. Grain stores are life itself in this world. Bread means survival through winter. Anything that threatens it becomes an enemy. Town records are clear on this. Rats are not merely pests. They destroy food, undermine foundations, and spread illness. Eliminating them is a public necessity, even if no one wants to watch how it is done. A figure steps from the shadows carrying a small sack and a long stick fitted with a looped cord. He moves quietly, not sneaking, but economical. He knows this ground. His boots are thick, scarred, reinforced at the toes. He taps the stone lightly as he walks, listening more than looking. A rat darts from a crack in the wall. The movement is instant. The loop tightens. The animal is gone. The rat catcher drops it into the sack and resets the cord without pause. There is no cruelty here, only efficiency shaped by necessity. Municipal ordinances often offer bounties for rats, paid by tail or head. Proof matters. Fraud exists. Some attempt to breed rats to collect rewards. Authorities respond by adjusting payments. Control becomes a constant negotiation. The catcher moves on, checking traps set earlier. Small wooden boxes baited with scraps. A metal snap echoes sharply in the quiet. He winces slightly. Noise draws attention. Attention brings questions. You follow at a respectful distance. He avoids puddles instinctively, keeps to raised stones. He knows where waste collects, where disease lingers. Survival here comes from observation, not ignorance. An unsettling thought drifts through your mind. Chroniclers connect rat populations to outbreaks of plague, though the exact mechanisms remain debated. Fleas, bacteria, climate, trade routes. The picture is complex. What is not debated is fear. When sickness comes, rat catchers are suddenly both blamed and relied upon. He pauses near a bakery. Yesterday's bread still scents the doorway. He kneels, lifting a sack slightly to inspect the ground beneath. Droppings scatter like dark rice. He clicks his tongue softly. 2 rats bolt. 1 escapes. 1 does not. He straightens slowly, stretching his back. The sack shifts faintly. You do not look inside. The weight tells you enough. Some rat catchers keep terriers or ferrets trained for this work, sending them into tight spaces humans cannot reach. Animals become colleagues, not pets. Their lives measured in usefulness as much as affection. People react quickly when they see him. Shutters close. Figures turn away. Fear and gratitude share the same gesture. Rat catchers occupy an uncomfortable space. Necessary, yet associated with filth and death. He rinses his hands briefly at a well using water meant for animals. He does not linger. Water is precious. Clean water even more so. He wipes his hands on his trousers and moves on, already scanning the ground ahead. A rat squeals somewhere down an alley. Then silence returns. This job is not about extermination. It is about management. Rats never disappear completely. The goal is balance, not victory. As the catcher vanishes into a passage too narrow to follow, you slow your pace. The street widens again, pulling you toward the center of town where torchlight grows steadier and authority lives closer to view. The air smells cleaner here.
Smoker replaces rat.
Metal replaces mud. You hear voices ahead, low and serious, and the clink of armor shifting with weight. This is where justice waits. At the center of a small square stands a wooden platform. Plain, functional, forgettable in half light. During the day, children may play nearby. Merchants may pass without looking twice. At certain moments, it becomes the most watched place in town. The executioner stands a little apart, inspecting his tools. Town records show executioners are salaried officials, sometimes granted housing as part of their position. This is not mob violence. It is administration. You watch him test the weight of a sword, adjusting his grip with care. His hands are steady. That steadiness defines his profession. A clean strike is not only mercy. It protects reputation. A botched execution brings shame, punishment, even dismissal. Skill matters here as much as strength. Others keep their distance, not wide enough to suggest fear alone, but enough to mark separation. Executioners enforce law, yet are often shunned socially. Many marry within small circles, bound by shared exclusion. A detail often surprises modern readers. Executioners frequently perform other impure tasks, removing animal carcasses, cleaning ditches, torturing prisoners for confessions. Society clusters all unpleasant necessities under the same hands. Power is visible here. Order is manual. The executioner covers his blade carefully and turns away. The square empties slowly. The quiet that follows feels heavier than noise ever could. You step back into motion, carrying the realization that order in this world relies not only on laws, but on individuals willing to carry out acts others only imagine. And the town, for all its walls and bells, depends on them completely. The square empties slowly, as if the stones themselves hesitate to forget what they are meant to witness. Torchlight steadies here, less flicker, more order. Authority prefers visibility. You feel it in the way the space opens, in the way voices lower without being told to. This is the center of town not because it is convenient, but because it is watched. You walk along the edge of the square, careful not to step onto the platform. No one has told you not to. You simply understand. Some boundaries do not need signs. Nearby, a small building stands with thick walls and narrow windows. The door is reinforced with iron bands. This is not a place of welcome. It is a place of waiting. The town jail is rarely large, because long-term imprisonment is expensive and impractical. Medieval justice moves quickly. Accusation leads to judgment. Judgment leads to consequence. Delays benefit no one. Inside, a man sits on a low stool sharpening a blade that is not a sword. It is shorter, heavier, shaped for precision rather than reach. The sound is steady, almost gentle. Stone against metal. Stone against metal. It does not hurry. This is the headsman's work, and it is not limited to execution. You learn quietly, as if the town itself is explaining without words. Executioners often serve as jailers, torturers, and enforcers of corporal punishment. Whipping, branding, mutilation. These are legal penalties, codified and regulated. Pain is not chaos here. It is structured. A small but telling detail surfaces. Many executioners keep detailed records of their work, noting outcomes, payments, and unusual circumstances. Reputation matters. Skill matters. A clean punishment reflects not only on the executioner, but on the authority that employs him. You step closer to the jail window and peer inside. A figure sits on the floor, knees drawn up, breathing shallowly. Chains rest loose, not tight. Restraint here is about presence, not force. Escape is unlikely. Where would one go? The smell is different here. Less rot, more iron, old sweat, damp straw. Fear has a scent, subtle but unmistakable. You move on. Across the square, a watchman leans against a post, helmet tilted back slightly. His spear rests against the stone. He does not look bored. He looks alert in a quiet way. Watching is work here. The night does not belong to the careless. Town watches are often composed of ordinary citizens serving shifts by obligation rather than choice. Others are hired professionals.
Duties vary.
Some patrol walls. Some guard gates. Some enforce curfew. Their authority is limited, but visible. A watchman's job is not to fight bravely. It is to notice early. He clears his throat softly as you pass, not as a warning, but as acknowledgement. You nod without thinking. This exchange feels old, practiced. Recognition matters. Being seen is safer than slipping unnoticed. Beyond the square, the street narrows again, but differently than before. The buildings here are sturdier. Stone replaces wood. Doors are heavier. This is where money settles, where trade concentrates, where valuables sleep behind locks. You hear the faint clink of metal, rhythmic and careful. A man kneels by a doorway, tools laid out on a cloth. He works quietly, not furtively, not hiding. He is a locksmith. Locks exist in medieval towns, but they are not universal. They are expensive. They signal status. A lock suggests something worth protecting. The locksmith's trade thrives on fear as much as wealth. Fires, theft, unrest, all drive demand. You watch him work by lantern light, shaping a small metal piece with precise taps. Each movement is economical. No wasted effort. No flourish. This is not artistry for admiration. It is craftsmanship for survival. An overlooked fact settles in. Locksmiths often know the weaknesses of every door in town. Trust binds this profession tightly. Abuse it and reputation collapses. In small communities, memory is long. The man tests the lock gently, listening for resistance. He smiles briefly, satisfied, then packs his tools without looking up. He does not ask who you are. Curiosity is optional here. Discretion is not. You continue walking. The town feels calmer now, not because danger has passed, but because systems are in place. Watching, enforcing, repairing, maintaining. Survival is distributed across roles, each one quiet and specific. Ahead, a different sound rises. Not harsh, not metallic. Soft voices, measured, repetitive. You follow it to a low building with wide doors left open despite the cold. Inside, men sit at long tables bent over parchment. Candles burn low, carefully trimmed. Ink pots are covered between strokes. This is the scribe's domain. Literacy is rare. Writing is power. Contracts, laws, property records, church documents, all pass through hands like these. The work is slow and exacting. Mistakes carry consequences. One scribe pauses to stretch his fingers, rubbing them together to restore warmth. Ink thickens in the cold. Hands cramp easily. The body becomes an obstacle to the mind. You glance at the parchment nearest you. The letters are neat, disciplined, almost hypnotic. Each stroke deliberate. The repetition feels calming, even now. You understand why monasteries value this labor so highly. It orders thought. It slows time. A subtle truth surfaces. Scribes rarely write for themselves. They transmit others' words. Authority flows through them but does not belong to them. This distance offers safety, but limits influence. The candles flicker. One scribe adjusts a wick without looking. Habit carries him through. You step back into the street. The night deepens. Fewer doors remain open. Fewer voices drift. The town begins to hold its breath, waiting for dawn without trusting it. Near the gate, you see a figure crouched by the wall, chisel in hand. Stone chips scatter softly at his feet. He works carefully, smoothing a damaged section of masonry. This is maintenance, not construction. Repair matters more than growth here. Walls protect everything. They demand constant care. A mason's job never truly ends. Weather erodes. Time cracks. Neglect invites collapse. His work is quiet, thankless, and essential. No one notices a wall that holds. Everyone notices one that fails. You watch him test the surface with his fingertips, eyes narrowed. Satisfied, he packs his tools and stands slowly, stretching his back. He glances at the gate, then at the sky. Dawn is still far away. The gate guard shifts his weight. The iron-bound doors loom behind him. Opening them too early invites danger. Opening them too late invites anger. Timing here is delicate. You realize how many jobs exist solely to manage timing. When to open, when to close, when to act, when to wait. The town is a clock built of people. Each roll clicks into place without fanfare. No speeches, no pras, just repetition night after night. As you turn away from the gate and head back toward the heart of the town, your steps feel slower, heavier. Not from fatigue, but from understanding. Survival here is not heroic. It is procedural. It relies on men and women willing to perform tasks that others avoid, trust systems that rarely reward them, and accept roles that shape their entire lives without applause. The night continues its work quietly, and so do they. Morning does not arrive suddenly in a medieval town. It seeps in. Light slides cautiously between buildings, touching only the highest edges at first, then sinking lower as if testing whether it is welcome. The air cools briefly before warming again. Somewhere wood creaks. Somewhere else, a cough echoes and fades. You walk through streets that are no longer secret, only tired. This is the hour when the town begins to exchange sleep for hunger. The smell reaches you before the sound. Yeast, smoke, warm grain. It drifts outward from low buildings where ovens have never fully cooled. Bakers work through the night not out of dedication, but necessity. Bread must be ready before labor begins. The town wakes on carbohydrates. You pause outside a bakehouse where a man pulls loaves from an oven using a long wooden peel. His face is streaked with flour and sweat. He moves with speed now, not to rush, but to keep pace with heat. Timing matters. Burnt bread ruins reputation. Undercooked bread invites illness. Behind him, a younger figure stacks loaves onto boards, fingers quick despite the heat. Apprentices learn by watching, by copying, by burning themselves once and never forgetting. Bread is not just food here. It is measurement. Wages are calculated in loaves. Charity is distributed as bread. Punishment may include the destruction of bread. The size and weight of a loaf is regulated by law, enforced by inspection. A bread weigher passes through the doorway briefly, lifting a loaf, checking balance, marking approval. He says nothing. He does not need to. Presence is enough. You move on as customers begin to gather. Coins change hands. Trust is tested bite by bite. Nearby, another smell layers itself over bread. Meat, not fresh, not spoiled, simply present. You follow it to the butcher's quarter, where carcasses hang from hooks, skinned and segmented with practiced precision. The butcher wipes his blade on a cloth already stained beyond redemption. His work is direct, honest. Blood flows and is cleaned away. Waste is collected separately. Nothing useful is discarded. You notice how early this work begins. Meat spoils quickly. Cool air helps. Morning is safer than afternoon. An overlooked reality settles in. Butchers occupy a complicated social position. They handle death daily, yet provide nourishment. They are necessary, yet often viewed with suspicion. Their knives inspire both gratitude and unease. A small boy carries a bucket of offal toward the edge of town. He walks carefully. Spilling invites scolding. This bucket will feed pigs, dogs, or be processed further. Even death continues working. You leave the butcher behind and pass into a street where voices rise in argument rather than trade. Two men stand close, gesturing sharply. A third listens, arms crossed. This is a dispute over payment. Labor performed. Payment delayed. Words escalate, but not beyond control. Everyone knows where this could end if allowed to run too far. Before fists can form, another figure steps between them. Older, calm. His presence shifts the tone instantly. This is a mediator, often a guild elder or respected tradesman. Not law enforcement, but authority born of reputation. Conflicts are costly. Resolution is valuable. He listens. He nods. He speaks briefly. The men grumble, then separate.
No verdict shouted.
No punishment declared. Just containment. You realize how much medieval order relies on interruption rather than force. Violence is expensive. Compromise is efficient. The street opens into a small square where women sit low to the ground, hands moving steadily through piles of fabric. Spinning, carding, mending. Textile labor never ends. Clothing wears faster here. Repairs matter. A torn garment is not fashion. It is vulnerability. One woman hums softly as she works. The rhythm of her hands sets the pace. Fiber becomes thread. Thread becomes fabric. Fabric becomes protection. This labor is quiet, repetitive, and foundational. Without it, the town freezes, sickens, collapses. A detail often overlooked emerges. Spinning is so constant that it fills gaps in time. Waiting becomes work. Conversation becomes production. Hands rarely rest. You continue walking and notice barrels being rolled from a cellar. The smell of ale rises, sharp and yeasty. Brewers prepare for the day's trade. Fermentation waits for no one. A brewer checks the surface of a vat, skimming carefully. Too much foam means trouble. Too little means weakness. Balance defines quality. You recall how ale replaces water in many diets. Safer, more reliable, consumed by all ages. Brewing is healthcare disguised as commerce. A cat slips between barrels, tail flicking. Pauses, watches you, then disappears. Even animals understand opportunity here. The sound of hammering returns, this time lighter, faster. A cooper repairs a barrel hoop, tapping metal into place. Without barrels, trade halts.
Liquids spill.
Grain rots. This job exists entirely to support others. You notice how often medieval labor forms chains. One task feeds another. One failure ripples outward. A woman balances a basket of vegetables on her hip, moving toward the market. Her pace is unhurried. Speed risks bruising. Bruising lowers value. Markets bloom gradually. Stalls open. Goods are arranged. Voices warm up. Negotiation begins. You pass a fishmonger laying out his catch on wet boards. The smell is sharp, clean, fleeting. Freshness matters. Fish does not forgive delay. Nearby, a man tests coins with his teeth, then with a small scale. Counterfeiting is common. Trust is fragile. Verification is constant. You realize how exhausting this vigilance must be. Every exchange carries risk. Every interaction demands attention. As the sun climbs higher, shadows shorten. The town grows louder. Work accelerates. You step aside to let a cart pass. Creaks under the weight of stone. Building never stops. Expansion, repair, replacement. Nothing lasts untouched. A woman calls out prices. A man laughs too loudly. A child runs and is scolded. Life unfolds without ceremony. And beneath it all, the same truth persists. Survival here is not dramatic. It is continuous. No single job defines the town. Together, they sustain it. You slow your pace and let the noise blur slightly. The rhythm becomes soothing, predictable, almost comforting. The medieval town does not thrive. It endures. And endurance, you now understand, is its greatest achievement. By midday, the town has fully awakened. But not all doors open with the same confidence. Some remain half-closed, shutters pulled tight even as sunlight presses against them. You notice these houses now that your eyes have learned what to look for. Silence in daylight is rarely accidental. Illness does not announce itself politely. You turn down a narrower street where sound seems to drain away. Here, footsteps soften. Voices lower. People move with caution rather than hurry. A woman steps out briefly to empty a basin, then retreats again, wiping her hands on her apron with unusual care. You smell vinegar before you see it. A man stands outside one of the houses holding a cloth soaked in sharp liquid to his face. He breathes through it slowly. This is protection as understood here. Not perfect, but intentional. Vinegar, herbs, smoke. Anything that feels like control. Inside the house, someone is sick. You do not enter, but you understand what happens beyond the threshold. The sick are not isolated by technology or policy. They are isolated by fear and practicality. Care is personal, intimate, risky. A caregiver moves between homes like this, often unnoticed until absence is felt. They are not always trained. They are often family members, neighbors, or paid helpers with little choice. Women dominate this work, though men do it too, especially when strength is needed. You learn quietly that illness reorganizes labor. When someone falls sick, others absorb their tasks. Children step forward.
Neighbors fill gaps.
Survival demands flexibility. Further down the street, you hear chanting. Low, rhythmic, not loud enough to draw a crowd. A priest stands near a doorway, murmuring prayers for someone you cannot see. His role here is not cure. It is comfort. It is preparation. The boundary between healing and dying is thin. You pass a small building with a painted symbol on its door. Inside, a healer sorts dried plants, fingers moving carefully. This is not an apothecary serving commerce. This is folk medicine, rooted in observation and inheritance. She looks up briefly, assessing you, then returns to her work. Trust is selective here. Knowledge is guarded. A detail surfaces that reshapes your understanding. Many healers, especially women, operate outside formal guild structures. Their authority comes from reputation, results, memory. When outcomes disappoint, accusations follow quickly. The line between healer and witch is fragile. You move on. At the edge of the district, smoke curls upward from a fire pit. Bedding burns. Clothing burns. Wood burns. This is prevention through destruction. Fire cleans what water cannot. Two men work together, feeding fabric into the flames. They do not speak. Their faces are tight. This work smells of loss as much as caution. Nearby, a child watches silently, holding a small object that will soon join the fire. The choice has already been made. Possession is less important than survival. You realize how often medieval life demands surrender. Objects, comfort, certainty. As you leave the smoke behind, the town feels different again. Lighter in sound, heavier in thought. You come upon a small courtyard where an elderly man sits sharpening needles. His hands shake slightly, but the motion is precise. He repairs fishing nets and sacks. Work that requires patience more than strength. Age does not remove usefulness here, changes it. The man glances up and nods as you pass. Respect flows quietly between those who endure. You think about how illness, age, and injury do not remove people from society. They reposition them. Everyone contributes until they cannot, and often beyond. The afternoon sun warms stone and bone alike. Shadows soften. Activity steadies rather than intensifies. You walk toward a hospice-like building near the church, where the sick and poor are sometimes housed. Charity exists here, but it is structured, limited, conditional. Inside, straw mattresses line the walls. Some occupants sleep, others stare at nothing. Volunteers move quietly, offering water, wiping brows, adjusting blankets. This is care without promise. Records show such institutions funded by donations, guild contributions, or religious orders. Capacity is always smaller than need. Selection is unavoidable. You do not linger. Some spaces ask only witness, not presence. Outside, the town resumes its rhythm. Life and death coexist without clear borders. You pass a midwife speaking softly to a pregnant woman. Birth is imminent. Anxiety mixes with anticipation. Childbirth here is dangerous, unpredictable. Midwives hold enormous responsibility, learned through experience rather than texts. A detail emerges. Midwives often serve as witnesses in legal matters related to birth, legitimacy, and inheritance. Their testimony carries weight. Their role extends beyond the body. The woman breathes slowly. The midwife listens. Time compresses. You step away, giving space. The smell of cooking returns. Herbs simmer. Soup thickens. Nourishment becomes medicine when other options fail. As afternoon leans toward evening, fatigue shows. Movements slow. Voices drop. Work transitions again. Illness has not vanished. It never does. But it has been managed, negotiated, endured. You understand now that medieval survival is not about defeating death. It is about living alongside it without surrendering meaning. The town does not stop for sickness. It adjusts, and those adjustments, repeated day after day, keep the fragile balance intact. As the afternoon thins and light begins to tilt sideways, the town shifts again. Not abruptly, not with announcement, just a subtle tightening like a body preparing for rest while staying alert. Fire becomes the quiet center of attention now. Not the kind that warms hands or cooks food, but the kind that threatens everything at once. You smell smoke long before you see flame. A man stands in the street with a bucket, testing its weight. Another checks the lid of a water barrel fixed near a doorway. These are not emergency measures. They are habits. Fire prevention is constant here, not reactive. Once fire starts, control is unlikely. Buildings press close together. Wood frames, thatch roofs, shared walls. One spark can erase a neighborhood. You notice how hearths are tended carefully as evening approaches. Ashes are banked. Flames reduced. Cooking slows. Candles are trimmed. Carelessness is expensive. A fire watcher passes slowly, carrying a lantern shielded on 3 sides. The light falls downward, illuminating thresholds and eaves. His pace is deliberate, not hurried, not slow. He listens as much as he looks. Town records describe fines for uncovered flames, unattended candles, improper disposal of embers. Enforcement is uneven, but fear is universal. Memory does the work of law. You pass a house where a woman kneels by the hearth, stirring coals with a metal rod. She glances up briefly, nods to the watcher, then returns to her task. A shared understanding passes between them. Fire does not care who you are. You continue toward a section of town where roofs are lower and spacing slightly wider. This is intentional. Fire breaks. Narrow alleys widened by decree. Small sacrifices of space to preserve existence. A carpenter works at dusk, replacing a damaged beam before night fully claims the sky. He works fast but not rushed. Experience tells him what must be finished now and what can wait. Tools clink softly. Wood settles into place. Another small defense is raised. You realize how much medieval labor is preventative rather than productive. Effort spent to avoid disaster rather than to gain reward. As shadows lengthen, bells ring again. Curfew approaches. Not everyone will obey, but everyone hears it. The sound spreads, touching corners of the town unevenly, fading where stone interrupts. Shops begin to close. Doors bar. Voices lower. Movement slows. Night is returning. You notice the change in smell first. Less food. More oil. More damp stone. The air cools again, carrying the residue of the day away in layers. Near the gate, guards exchange shifts. Words are brief.
Familiar. No ceremony.
Responsibility transfers smoothly. You walk past a communal oven now cooling, its heat still radiating faintly. Bread for tomorrow is already planned. Preparation never truly stops. A woman pours water over ashes outside her door, watching steam rise briefly before vanishing. She does not rush. She waits until the last ember is dark. Only then does she retreat inside. A small but telling detail settles in. Fire safety is domestic labor as much as civic duty. Responsibility is distributed. No single authority can manage it alone. The town relies on collective caution. You pass a narrow lane where children play briefly before being called inside. Laughter cuts through the settling quiet, then disappears as doors close. Childhood retreats early here. Candles glow behind shutters. Pinpricks of light scattered unevenly across the town's surface. You walk toward the square again, now transformed. What was busy hours ago feels hollow, expectant. Torchlight replaces sunlight, carving sharper shadows. A man crosses the square carrying a bucket of water and a broom. He sweeps debris into a pile, dampens it, then carries it away. Night demands cleanliness. Loose straw feeds flame. You notice how few people remain outdoors. Those who do move with purpose. Wandering invites scrutiny. The fire watcher returns, making a second round. His lanterns glow rocks gently as he walks. The rhythm is calming, reassuring. You slow your pace, matching it. You think about how fire shapes everything here. Cooking, warmth, industry, worship.
Destruction.
It is central and feared in equal measure. In churches, candles symbolize prayer. In homes, survival. In workshops, livelihood. In streets, potential ruin. As night deepens, the town's sounds compress again. Fewer voices, more echoes. Footsteps carry farther. A bell rings once, then again. Curfew is now active. Doors that remain open do so knowingly. You pass a tavern shuttering its windows, laughter trapped inside. Night drinking is permitted in some towns, forbidden in others. Enforcement varies. Risk is calculated. A watchman clears his throat, a signal rather than a warning. You nod without stopping. The sky darkens fully now. Stars appear, tentative at first, then confident. The town becomes a cluster of warm points surrounded by vastness. You walk toward a rise near the wall and look back. From here, firelight flickers like a nervous system. Each glow a household. Each household a potential loss if vigilance fails. You understand something deeply now. Fire is not just a danger here. It is a teacher. It demands attention, discipline, memory, community. The town survives not because it avoids fire, but because it learns to live carefully with it. Night settles completely, and once again, unseen hands begin their quiet work. Night does not end the town's work. It refines it. You feel the difference immediately. Sound thins. Movement sharpens. What remains is deliberate. Every step has a reason now. Every pause means something. You walk along a street that looks familiar by day and unfamiliar by night. Shapes soften. Edges blur. Doorways become thresholds rather than entrances. Windows glow faintly, then dim as candles are pinched out one by one. Sleep arrives unevenly here. Some households rest early. Others cannot. The reasons vary. Work, worry, pain, habit. The town holds them all without judgment. You pass a house where soft breathing drifts through a cracked shutter. A child murmurs in sleep. A parent shifts quietly, careful not to wake them. The day's labor rests inside small bodies. Across the street, another house remains awake. Low voices carry. The clink of a cup. A cough suppressed too late. Illness keeps its own schedule. You notice how darkness redistributes attention. By day, eyes scan stalls and faces. By night, they track sound and movement. A single footstep can draw a dozen glances. Near the wall, you see a figure crouched, lantern covered, hands moving slowly along stone. He searches for cracks, damage, signs of tampering. This is inspection without announcement. The wall must hold while others sleep. A detail settles in quietly. Walls are not trusted simply because they exist. They are trusted because they are watched. You continue along the inner path, where refuse has been gathered into damp piles earlier in the evening. The street looks cleaner now, but the smell lingers faintly, woven into stone itself. Cleanliness here is temporary, renewed daily through effort rather than permanence. A cart rolls past you slowly, wheels wrapped to muffle sound. The driver keeps his gaze forward. Night transport is practical, not secretive. Quiet is courtesy. The cart turns down a side street and disappears. You pause near a well, now capped and covered. Water sleeps too. Drawing at night invites accidents. Rules exist for reasons learned the hard way. A watchman passes, spear angled downward, lantern steady. His eyes flick briefly to you, then away. Recognition without interruption. This is order functioning smoothly. Beyond him, the street opens into a darker pocket where light rarely reaches even by day. Here, a man stands beside a doorway that is not marked. He waits. This is a place for transactions that prefer shadow. Not illegal necessarily, just discreet. Debt settlements. Quiet negotiations. Words exchanged without witnesses. You do not linger. Some spaces resist observation. Instead, you follow the curve of the street toward the river again, now transformed by moonlight. The water reflects broken silver, restless and patient at once. The tide moves whether the town watches or not. A figure walks the bank, pole in hand, testing ground ahead of each step. He searches for damage, erosion, changes brought by water's quiet insistence. Maintenance continues here too. You hear a splash farther down. Someone rinses tools. Water darkens briefly, then clears. Evidence dissolves quickly at night. A breeze moves across the river and into town, carrying cooler air. It brushes against skin and stone alike, equalizing temperature, slowing breath. You realize how the town uses night to recover. Heat escapes. Smells soften. Tension loosens. Even the animals settle differently now. Dogs curl near doorways. Cats choose high ledges. Horses shift weight, sighing quietly. You walk past a stable where a boy sleeps curled in straw near the door. He stirs as you pass, then settles again. Guarding animals is guarding wealth. Sleep adapts. Farther on, a church bell marks the hour. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to remind anyone awake that time still moves. The bell's echo fades into stone and sky. You feel the pull of rest yourself now. The rhythm of the town encourages it. Not commands. Encourages. Yet some remain awake by necessity. Near the outskirts, you see a low fire burning under a covered shelter. Two figures sit nearby, faces lit softly from below. They tend charcoal, feeding it carefully. This fire will be used at dawn. Preparation belongs to night. They speak quietly, words indistinct, not meant to travel. Companionship feels different here. Less performative, more sincere. You step away, allowing the firelight to shrink behind you. The town grows quieter still. At a crossroads, a lone figure stands listening. Not moving, not waiting for anyone, just listening. A guard, or a messenger between shifts, or someone whose home is louder than the street. Night accommodates many reasons. You realize how little of medieval life is truly private. Walls are thin, streets are close, sounds travel. And yet, night creates pockets of solitude even here. You stop walking. For a moment, you simply stand and breathe. The town breathes with you. Somewhere a rat scurries. Somewhere a floorboard creaks. Somewhere a dream shifts. The systems you have walked through all day now operate quietly in the background. Waste waits. Water settles. Food cools. Tools rest. Bodies heal or fail. Nothing dramatic happens. That is the point. Survival is rarely loud. As the night deepens, you turn back toward where you began, not retracing steps, but releasing them. The town no longer needs your attention. It knows how to continue. You find a place near the wall where stone still holds warmth from the day. You sit, lean back, let the texture ground you. The sky above feels immense now. Stars hold their positions. Clouds drift without concern. You think of the hands you have watched, the routines you have followed, the jobs that felt strange only until they felt necessary. All of it persists because people choose repetition over collapse. Slowly, your thoughts soften. The sounds of the town blur into a single, steady hush. Like breath, like tide, like sleep approaching. You let your eyes close. The town keeps watch, and you rest. Dawn does not ask permission. It arrives anyway. You sense it before you see it. A subtle thinning of darkness. A gentler temperature on your skin. The air shifts, carrying less night and more possibility. Somewhere beyond the roofs, light gathers itself, patient and inevitable. The town exhales. You open your eyes, not because something wakes you, but because the world grows readable again. Edges return. Shapes regain meaning. Stone shows texture, which shows grain. The boundary between shadow and substance softens. A rooster calls, uncertain at first, then confident. Another answers farther away. The sound spreads in uneven ripples, marking the hour without precision. This is timekeeping by habit rather than instrument. You stand and stretch slowly. Muscles respond with quiet complaint, then settle. Even rest carries weight here. The street you slept beside looks different now. Cleaner in a temporary way. The refuse gathered last night has been moved. Water has been poured over dust and ash. The air smells cooler, faintly sweet with morning damp. A woman opens her door and steps out, scanning the sky. She adjusts her shawl and begins her day without pause. There is no ceremony. Morning is obligation as much as opportunity. You begin walking again, letting the town wake around you. Shutters open with soft knocks. Latches click. Doors creak. Each sound adds to the familiar chorus of beginning. You pass a house where a man steps out carrying a bundle of tools. He pauses to test their weight, then sets off toward his work. The tools are not new. Their handles are polished by years of hands. You recognize the rhythm now. The town repeats itself not because it lacks imagination, but because repetition works. At the well, early figures gather. Buckets lower and rise in steady sequence.
No pushing. No argument.
The day is young enough to allow cooperation. Tension will come later. A boy spills a little water and freezes, eyes wide. No one scolds him. Not yet. Grace exists briefly at dawn. You pass the bakery again. The first customers wait quietly, coins already in hand. Bread is still warm. Steam escapes as loaves are broken. The smell spreads quickly, inviting appetite and memory at once. A baker nods to you, then returns to counting. Numbers matter more than greetings this early. Across the street, a woman lays out vegetables on a cloth, arranging them carefully to hide imperfections. Presentation is survival. First impressions sell. You notice how light transforms labor. What felt heavy at night now feels ordinary. The same stones, the same walls, the same tasks. Context changes everything. A cart rattles past, loaded with firewood. The driver shifts his weight, adjusting balance. He will make this trip many times today. Each load matters. You follow the cart briefly, then turn toward a smaller lane where quieter work resumes. A tailor opens his shop, unrolling fabric, smoothing it with care. He inspects yesterday's stitches, nods, and continues. Precision at this hour prevents correction later. You see a woman kneeling near her door, scrubbing a threshold with water and straw. Cleanliness is defensive, keeps pests away, keeps appearances intact. A detail you now understand settles gently. Much of medieval labor exists to prevent decline rather than create improvement. Holding ground matters more than advancing it. Near the church, bells ring again, longer this time. Morning prayers. Attendance varies. Some stop, some pass by. Faith integrates with routine rather than interrupting it. You stand briefly at the edge of the square and watch the town fully awaken. Children emerge, some already carrying tasks, others lingering before being called. A boy chases a stray chicken, laughing. An older girl pulls him back by the sleeve, already responsible. A group of men gather near a notice board where parchment flaps in the breeze. A new order posted. They read slowly, sounding words out loud for one another. Information spreads mouth to mouth, then reshapes itself. A town crier clears his throat nearby, preparing to reinforce the message later. Redundancy ensures memory. You walk past a workshop where metal rings sharp against stone. The smith has already begun. Fire roars. Sparks leap. Heat returns to the day. He pauses to drink water, wipes his mouth, then continues. Momentum matters. You feel the town's energy settle into a familiar pattern. Busy, but not frantic. Purposeful, but not ambitious. This is not a place of grand plans. It is a place of maintained ones. As the sun rises higher, you notice how fatigue already lives in bodies. Work never truly ends here. Rest is a pause, not a reset. You think back to the night workers, the watchers, the cleaners, the ones who made this calm possible. Their absence is the proof of their success. A woman passes carrying linens, freshly washed, still damp. She spreads them over a line strung between buildings. The fabric catches light and flutters gently. A small, domestic victory. You pause to watch it move. This town does not celebrate often. It preserves itself daily through gestures like this. You continue walking toward the gate, now open. Travelers enter cautiously. Merchants arrive with goods and stories. The outside world presses inward again. Guards check faces not aggressively, but attentively. Recognition reduces risk. A pilgrim pauses to adjust his pack. A guide gestures toward the road. Movement resumes. The cycle widens. You step aside as a funeral procession passes quietly. Not somber, not loud. Death continues too, woven into the morning without drama. A child asks a question. An adult answers briefly. Life absorbs loss quickly here. It must. You realize something important now, standing in this light. The medieval town is not defined by its strangeness. It is defined by its continuity. The jobs you observed do not exist in isolation. They overlap, support, correct, replace one another. When one fails, another strains to compensate. There is no buffer.
No exist.
Only balance. You feel your breathing slow again, matching the pace of footsteps around you. The town does not demand attention. It simply exists, doing what it has always done. You reach the edge of the square and stop once more, not because you must, but because the moment asks for stillness. Light warms your face. Sound fills the space gently. You understand now that survival here is not about resilience as an abstract idea. It is about routine honored long enough to become invisible. The town will continue after you leave it. It will wake, work, worry, rest, and repeat. It does not need witnesses. It needs participants. You let that thought settle. There is nothing left to learn right now. Nothing left to analyze. Just the steady comfort of a world held together by ordinary effort. You turn away slowly, letting the scene blur, letting the details soften. Your steps fade. The town keeps going, and you drift toward rest once more. By mid-morning, the town has settled into motion again, but you feel another presence shaping everything beneath the noise. It is quieter than law, older than buildings, less predictable than people. Weather. You notice it in small ways first. A man adjusts his cloak even though the sun is warm. A woman tilts her basket to keep shadow off greens that wilt too quickly. Someone glances upward, gauging clouds that have not yet decided what they are. Weather is not background here. It is instruction. You walk toward the fields beyond the last houses, where the town loosens its grip and land begins to speak more clearly. Paths widen. Stone gives way to packed earth. The smell changes, greener now, layered with soil and plant life. Farmers move slowly but continuously. No one rushes the land. Rushing invites mistakes, and mistakes last all year. You watch a man kneel to examine soil between his fingers. He crumbles it, smells it, lets it fall. No tools.
No measurement.
Experience guides him. This soil tells him whether to plant now or wait, whether rain has been enough or too much. A detail settles in that reshapes your understanding of time. Medieval planning stretches across seasons, not days. Decisions made this morning echo into winter. Nearby, a woman mends a fence weakened by last night's damp. Wood swells. Post-shift. She corrects it before animals test the weakness. Prevention again. Always prevention. The wind picks up slightly, brushing across fields and into town. Carries sound with it. A distant hammer. A distant voice. Everything feels connected now. You turn back toward the town as clouds drift overhead, thin and indecisive. The light softens. Colors flatten slightly. People respond without discussion. Cloaks come out. Windows close halfway. Work adjusts its pace. A cooper pauses, testing the humidity with his hands before tightening a hoop. Moisture changes wood, ignoring that cracks barrels later. A baker shifts loaves closer to the oven's edge, compensating for cooling air. Bread remembers temperature. Weather shapes skill as much as tools do. You notice gutters being checked, channels cleared of debris. Rain may come later, or tomorrow, or not at all. Preparation does not wait for certainty. A boy runs past carrying kindling. He trips, recovers, keeps going. Even children move with purpose when weather threatens change. The town smells different under cloud cover. Less sharp, more contained. Sound dulls slightly. Shadows soften. You feel time stretch. Seasons move slowly here, but their presence is constant. Winter is never far from thought. Neither is hunger, nor damp, nor firewood. You pass a woodcutter unloading logs near a shed. He stacks them carefully, leaving space for air. Rot ruins effort. Knowledge preserves it. A detail surfaces quietly. Fuel is security. Wood, charcoal, peat. Without them, cold becomes fatal. Gathering begins long before need becomes urgent. You walk toward a small open yard where herbs dry on racks. A woman checks them, turning bundles gently. Sun, cloud, wind. Each alters potency. Medicine depends on weather as much as belief. She murmurs softly, perhaps counting, perhaps remembering. Her hands know this routine well. You step back into the street as a light drizzle begins, barely noticeable. People react instantly. Hoods up, goods covered, tools moved inside. No panique, just adaptation. Rain is not dramatic. It is consequential. Stone darkens. Dust settles. Smells deepen. The town absorbs water slowly, unevenly. You pass a doorway where a man kneels to block a small leak with rags and clay. He presses firmly, tests, presses again. This leak will not matter today. It might matter next month. You realize how often medieval survival depends on cumulative decisions. Small corrections layered over time. The drizzle stops as quietly as it began. The sky remains overcast. People do not relax. They continue preparing. A cart moves toward the fields carrying seed sacks protected under waxed cloth. Timing matters. Rain-softened ground accepts seed better. A woman counts eggs quickly before packing them away. Cold preserves. Heat spoils. Balance again. You walk toward the river and watch its surface respond to the weather. Ripples shift. The current thickens slightly with runoff. Fishermen adjust nets. Water does not argue. The river teaches patience. Floods come without warning. Droughts linger without apology. The town adapts or suffers. You remember the mudlarks waiting for low tide. The water bearers gauging wells. The lime burners watching wind direction. Every job bends under weather's authority. You turn back inland and feel the town tighten again as rain threatens a second time. Movement compresses. People stay closer to shelter. In a covered arcade, traders wait, talking quietly. Commerce pauses without vanishing. Words replace exchange for now. You listen without focusing. Conversation drifts around crops, prices, rumors of storms elsewhere. Information travels through mouths, carried by concern. You realize how deeply weather binds community. Shared risk creates shared attention. As afternoon progresses, light shifts subtly behind clouds. Shadows are soft. Time feels slower. You walk past a stable where a groom brushes a horse, checking hooves for moisture. Wet hooves split. Injury costs labor. Prevention again. The groom hums softly. The horse lowers its head, accepting care. Trust exists even here. You feel your own pace slow, guided by the town's rhythm. Weather encourages rest without demanding it. A woman sits beneath an overhang mending clothing. Rain would soak fabric laid out earlier. She adjusts routine rather than fighting conditions. This flexibility feels like wisdom rather than compromise. You pause near the gate again and look outward. Fields stretch under gray sky. Work continues, measured and calm. No one fights the weather. They cooperate with it. A bell rings lightly from the church, marking the hour without urgency. Time continues regardless of sky. You think about how seasons structure life here. Planting, harvest, cold, thaw. Each returns predictably yet differently every year. Memory guides expectation. Experience refines it. The medieval town does not conquer nature. It negotiates, and that negotiation shapes everything. Buildings, diet, clothing, work hours, sleep. You feel the drizzle return, gentler this time, cools your skin. You welcome it without thinking. The town absorbs it too. You turn inward again, toward quieter streets, letting the weather fade into background presence. It will return. It always does. For now, the town continues its patient work under clouded sky, steady and unremarkable. And you move with it, calm and unhurried, as time stretches comfortably around you. The clouds thin without fully leaving, and the town exhales into a softer afternoon. Light returns in fragments, sliding along walls and settling where it can. This is the hour when the market steadies rather than surges, when urgency gives way to rhythm. You drift toward the market square again, not because it calls loudly, but because it is always there, pulling people back through repetition. The space feels different now than it did at dawn. Less anticipation, more familiarity. Stalls remain open, but voices have softened. Negotiations slow. Prices settle into expectation rather than debate. The sharp edges of commerce round themselves off as both buyer and seller grow tired of pushing. A fishmonger packs ice around the last of his catch. Freshness has limits. Whatever does not sell soon will not sell at all. Loss is accepted as part of the day. Nearby, a woman counts coins twice, then once more. Her fingers hesitate over one piece before setting it aside. Doubt lives quietly in markets. Trust is rebuilt constantly through habit. You notice how people return to the same stalls, the same faces. Loyalty forms not through contracts, but through repetition. Familiar hands feel safer. Familiar mistakes are tolerated more easily. A man buys grain and complains about quality, not loudly, just enough to be heard. The merchant responds with calm patience. They have done this dance before. It ends without escalation. You understand now that markets here are less about profit than continuity. Sellers aim to survive the season. Buyers aim to stretch resources. Balance is the unspoken goal. A child carries a basket far too large for her frame, wobbling slightly as she walks. An older woman adjusts the load without comment, then moves on. Assistance appears briefly, then vanishes. No thanks required. You pass a stall where second-hand tools are laid out carefully. Handles worn smooth, blades nicked, nothing new, everything functional. These tools carry memory in their weight. A man lifts a hammer, tests its balance, nods. He recognizes its history without needing to know it. Work leaves signatures. The smell of herbs drifts toward you from a corner stall.
Bundle hang overhead, swing gently.
The seller names each plant softly as customers approach, not as advertisement, but reassurance. Knowledge sells as much as product. You pause to listen, letting the names blur together. Sage, thyme, yarrow. Words carry comfort even when meaning fades. A subtle truth settles in. Much of medieval life is built on remembering what works. Innovation exists but slowly. Risk is expensive. Familiarity preserves. As afternoon leans forward, people begin packing up not because business ends, but because energy does. Bodies tire. Attention slips. Mistakes increase. A bell rings lightly from the guild hall, signaling a customary pause. Some heed it. Some ignore it. Tradition guides but does not compel. You wander toward a quieter edge of the square where storytellers sometimes gather. Today, one sits on a low stool, speaking to a small cluster of listeners. His voice is steady, measured, unhurried. The story is old. Everyone knows the ending. That does not matter. Stories here are not about surprise. They are about repetition. You listen as familiar names and events unfold. The teller's cadence invites calm. Memory becomes shared space. A listener nods at a favorite part. Another smiles briefly. The story ends without applause. The teller takes a sip of water and begins again for someone who arrived late. This feels important. In a world where change arrives unpredictably, repetition creates safety. Knowing what comes next reduces fear. You step away as the story continues without you. The square thins. Gaps appear between people. Sunlight touches stone more often now. You notice the way the town holds memory in physical form. Worn steps.
Polished door handles.
Smooth corners. Paths etched into earth. Movement repeats until it reshapes matter. Even mistakes leave traces. Near a wall, a man scrapes old notices away, preparing space for new ones. Layers of parchment peel back, revealing fragments of past concerns. Lost animals, new rules, old debts. Time stacks here rather than flows. You walk past a bench where two elderly figures sit quietly, watching movement without participating. Their presence anchors the space. They have seen this before. Many times. A boy runs past chasing a hoop. He stumbles, recovers, keeps going. The elders smile faintly. Continuity made visible. You feel the town settle into a slower pulse now. Afternoon wanes. Shadows lengthen again, not sharply, but gradually. Work transitions from production to preparation. Tools cleaned. Goods covered. Accounts tallied. Doors checked. A cooper tightens one last hoop before rolling a barrel into storage. A baker counts remaining loaves and sets aside those meant for charity. A tailor pins fabric for tomorrow's work. You notice how tomorrow is always present here. Rarely spoken of directly, but always implied. A woman sweeps her doorway, pushing dust into the street where it will be collected later. Cleanliness cycles endlessly. You pass a man repairing his shoes with quiet focus. Leather creaks. Thread pulls taut. This repair may last weeks. Maybe months. Enough. A small but telling detail emerges. People here fix things not to make them new, but to keep them useful. Perfection is unnecessary. Function is everything. You feel yourself slowing again, absorbing the unhurried pace. The market's noise fades into background hum. You step into a side street where sunlight barely reaches. Here, coolness settles early. Smells linger longer. Sound dampens. A woman lights a lamp in a window even though daylight remains. Habit anticipates need. Children are called home one by one. Voices soften. Play dissolves into routine. You hear the distant clatter of dishes. Supper approaches. As you continue walking, you realize how power operates quietly here. Not through force, but through expectation. People do what is done because it has always been done. Habit governs behavior more reliably than law. Markets function because people show up. Stories persist because they are retold. Tools survive because they are repaired. Relationships endure because they repeat. You stop near the edge of the square and look back once more. The market has not ended. It has simply transformed. This town does not surge and collapse. It ebbs and steadies. You breathe in slowly, letting the air settle in your chest. The rhythm is contagious. Soon, evening will begin its approach again. Fires will be banked. Doors closed. Night will return gently, not as interruption, but as continuation. For now, the town rests in familiarity. And you rest with it. Shoulders lower. Steps shorten. Voices soften as people return inward, carrying the day with them in baskets, on sleeves, in tired joints. The town does not stop working. It turns toward itself. You follow that turn. Smoke rises again from chimneys, thicker now, warmer, carrying the smell of supper. It is not a single scent, but many layered together, boiled grains, root vegetables, onions, fat rendered slowly to stretch flavor and nourishment as far as possible. Meat appears rarely, often in small pieces meant to season rather than fill. You pause outside a doorway where a woman stirs a pot suspended over a low fire. She tastes, adjusts, stirs again. No recipe. Just memory. Just habit refined by repetition. A child sits nearby breaking bread into pieces small enough to share evenly. Distribution matters. Fairness prevents argument. The lesson is learned early. Inside the home, light is dim. Candles are expensive. Firelight is favored. Shadows move gently along walls as bodies shift. Furniture is sparse. What exists serves purpose. You step aside as a man enters carrying a bundle of firewood. He sets it down carefully, not because the floor is delicate, but because noise carries. Evening values calm. He washes his hands in a basin, the water already cloudy from previous use. Clean enough. Enough is enough. You notice how meals are moments of recalibration. The day's labor ends here, not with celebration, but with replenishment. Eating is not leisure. It is recovery. A detail settles quietly. Supper is often the largest meal, time to fuel rest rather than activity. The body works hard here. It must be fed before sleep. You move along the street and glimpse other households doing the same. Similar pots, similar motions, variations in spice and availability, but the same rhythm. A woman leans out to exchange a few words with a neighbor. A ladle pauses midair. Conversation fills the gap. Community exists between bites. Further down, a man eats alone, seated on a low stool near his door. He does not hurry. He does not linger. He eats, finishes, wipes his hands, and stares briefly at the street before standing. Solitude is not unusual. Families form and dissolve here with regularity. Widows, orphans, unmarried laborers, elderly survivors. The household unit shifts over time. The town absorbs these changes quietly. You pass a doorway where a song drifts out, soft and untrained. Someone hums while washing dishes. Music belongs to ordinary moments as much as festivals. You realize how rarely silence exists completely. There is always a pot bubbling, a board creaking, a voice murmuring. Sound here is a sign of life, not disruption. As light fades, doors close more fully. Bars slide into place. Curtains are drawn. The town contracts again, turning its attention inward. You follow the narrowing streets toward a cluster of smaller homes. Inside one, an elderly woman tells a story to two children seated at her feet. The story is slow, familiar. The children know it already. They listen anyway. This is education without instruction. History passed as narrative rather than record. A subtle truth emerges. Most knowledge here survives not in books, but in people. Memory is currency. Forgetting is loss. You continue walking and notice a man repairing a chair by firelight. He tests the leg, tightens a wedge, tests again. This will hold. That is enough. Across the street, a woman sews by the last usable light of day, eyes narrowed in concentration. Each stitch matters. Waste invites scarcity. You feel the town's energy shifting toward rest now. Not collapse, not relief, just a gradual settling. Near the edge of the district, you see a group of men sharing a jug of ale, speaking quietly. Laughter surfaces briefly, then fades. Ale loosens tongues but does not erase caution. They discuss weather, crops, rumors of conflict elsewhere. The world beyond the town remains distant but not ignored. A bell rings from the church, marking the hour of evening prayer. Some pause. Some continue eating. Faith and routine coexist rather than compete. You notice how children are guided toward sleep early. Beds are shared. Space is tight. Bodies align themselves for warmth. A mother tucks a blanket around a child without waking them. Care is practiced silently. You move away, giving space. The smell of food fades slowly, replaced by smoke and cooling stone. The street darkens. Lanterns appear at intervals, marking paths rather than illuminating them fully. You step near a hearth visible through a window. The fire has been banked carefully. Coals glow faintly, promising warmth through the night without threat. A small but telling detail settles in. Evening work focuses on containment. Heat contained. Light contained. Energy contained. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is left unattended. As you continue walking, the town feels smaller again, as it did at night, but gentler now. Less tense. Less vigilant. The day's labor has been absorbed into bodies and homes. The systems you observed earlier continue quietly, but focus has shifted. Survival moves indoors. You feel your own pace slow further, guided by the environment. Evening invites introspection. You pause near a doorway and listen to the sound of a spoon scraping a bowl. The sound repeats, steady and calming. The bowl empties. The spoon rests. A man stretches, yawns, and begins preparing bedding near the fire. Sleep approaches without ceremony. You think about how many lives here are lived in cycles this small. Work, eat, rest, repeat. There is little space for abstraction. Meaning emerges from repetition rather than ambition. As darkness deepens, candles are extinguished one by one. Firelight dims. The town grows quieter again. You step back toward the wall and sit once more, feeling the warmth stored in stone. Evening air cools your skin. The contrast is comforting. You breathe slowly, matching the town's rhythm. This is the center of medieval life. Not markets, not law, not ceremony. Home. The quiet place where bodies recover, stories repeat, and tomorrow is prepared without naming it. You let that understanding settle gently. The town is ready for night again, and you are ready to rest. Night comes back the way it always does. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It folds itself over the town, layer by layer, until edges soften and urgency dissolves. You feel it in your shoulders first. The day loosens its grip. The weight of tasks completed settles into muscles and bone. The town exhales again. Slower this time, deeper. Lanterns appear one by one, never all at once. Each flame marks intention. Each light says someone is still awake, still responsible. You walk through streets that now belong to shadow rather than trade. Sounds travel farther again. A cough echoes. A footstep answers. Somewhere a door closes. Then another. Night rearranges attention. You pass a house where a man sits just inside the doorway, sharpening a knife by lantern light. Not a weapon, a tool. Tomorrow's work begins now, quietly, without witness. Preparation does not wait for morning. The stone beneath your feet still holds warmth, but less than before. The air cools gradually, not enough to shock, just enough to remind. Seasons shift in small increments here.
Extrême arrive slowly.
At the corner of a street, two watchmen exchange words. Short, efficient, no greeting needed. They know each other by habit more than name. The lantern passes from one hand to another. Responsibility transfers without ceremony. You follow one of them at a distance, not because you are curious, but because his pace is calming. He walks with purpose but without urgency. His boots know where to land. His eyes scan without strain. The watch does not look for trouble. It looks for change. A door left open that should be closed. A fire burning too bright. A voice raised too late. These details matter more than confrontation. You notice how he pauses at familiar points. Near the well. At the junction where three streets meet. Beneath a roofline that has caught embers before. Memory guides patrol routes. The town protects itself through recollection. You continue on and hear quiet movement behind you. A woman crosses the street carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. She moves quickly but not furtively. Night travel is allowed when purpose is clear. Ambiguity draws attention. She disappears into a doorway without sound. You pause near a small shrine set into a wall, candles flickering weakly. Someone has replaced one recently. Wax drips down stone, layering time in slow rivulets. Faith marks presence even in darkness. You stand there briefly, not praying, just observing. Shrines are less about devotion than continuity. They anchor streets emotionally. As you walk on, the smell of the day fades further. Food, sweat, smoke, all soften, replaced by cool stone and damp air. The town smells quieter now. Near the edge of town, you hear the low murmur of voices from a stable. A groom checks animals one last time. Hands run along flanks. Breathing is counted. Doors are secured. Livestock sleeps more restlessly than people. Animals remember danger longer. A horse shifts weight and snorts softly. The groom murmurs reassurance, a sound as much for himself as the animal. He lingers, then leaves, closing the door carefully behind him. You move toward the wall again, where guards stand silhouetted against stars. Beyond them, darkness stretches unbroken. Fields, forest, distance. The town draws its boundary firmly at night. A wind moves along the wall, stirring cloaks and banners. Fabric whispers briefly, then stills. The guards adjust their stance without comment. You feel how much trust rests on routines like this. The wall stands. The watch continues. Sleep becomes possible. Inside the town, most windows are dark now. A few glow faintly, marking illness, care, or wakefulness. Night does not equal rest for everyone. You pass a house where a candle burns low near a window. A figure sits beside a bed, head bowed. Care continues beyond daylight. Time stretches differently here. You step away, giving space. Farther on, you hear soft laughter from behind closed shutters. A family shares a moment before sleep. Joy finds room even here, even now. The street narrows and you walk more slowly, letting your steps fall in rhythm with breath. The town invites this pace. It does not rush you. You think back over the cycle you have witnessed. Morning labor, market rhythm, evening meals, night watch. Nothing spectacular. Everything essential. The medieval town survives not through brilliance, but through memory. Through habits passed hand to hand, generation to generation. A small but grounding truth settles fully now. Most of history is not events. It is repetition. Wars interrupt. Plagues scar. Kings rise and fall. But most days look like this. People wake, work, eat, rest, prepare, watch, and then do it again. You stop near the same stretch of wall where you rested before. The stone is cooler now. You sit anyway, feeling the contrast between body heat and night air. Above you, stars hold steady. They have watched countless nights like this. They do not judge. They do not record. They simply remain. You hear a bell ring softly, marking another hour. Fewer people hear it now. Those who do understand its meaning without thinking. Time passes. The town does not fear night. It manages it. You feel your thoughts slowing again, untangling themselves from detail and analysis. The images soften. The sounds blend. Watchmen continue their paths. Fires remain banked. Doors stay closed. Systems hold. You are no longer a visitor. You are simply present. Breathing becomes steady. Muscles relax. The weight of observation lifts. The medieval town does not need your attention anymore. It knows how to keep itself alive through the dark. You let your eyes close gently. Night holds the town, and you rest within its quiet order. Deep night feels different from evening. Heavier, thicker, as if the town itself has sunk into the ground slightly, settling its weight into stone and soil. You sense it in the stillness. Not silence, but a quieter kind of sound. One where even small noises feel large. A cough travels farther. A footstep echoes longer. The town listens more than it speaks. You walk slowly, careful not to break the balance. Most windows are dark now. Candles have been extinguished to save wax. Fires have been reduced to glowing embers. Homes breathe quietly, filled with sleeping bodies arranged for warmth rather than comfort. Sleep here is practical. You pass a doorway where a family sleeps together on straw mattresses laid close to the hearth. Blankets overlap. Arms rest across shoulders. Privacy is a luxury. Warmth is necessity. A child shifts, murmurs, then stills again. Dreams arrive without permission, shaped by work, hunger, and memory. Not everyone sleeps easily. In one house, a man sits upright, back against the wall, eyes open. He stares at nothing. His hands rest on his knees, fingers flexing occasionally. Tomorrow weighs on him, or yesterday, or both. You move on quietly. Fear exists here, but it is rarely dramatic. It does not shout. It lingers. It reminds. It asks questions without answers. Will the harvest be enough? Will illness return? Will fire stay contained? Will the roof hold another winter? These thoughts surface most clearly in deep night. Near the edge of town, you hear a sudden sound. With scraping stone, you pause, listening. A figure adjusts a shutter loosened by the wind. The noise stops. Balance returns. Nothing more happens. This is how most danger ends here. Not with confrontation, but with correction. You walk toward the churchyard again. The space feels different at night. Stones catch moonlight unevenly. Shadows stretch and distort. Names carved into markers soften into texture rather than language. The dead rest without ceremony now. Daytime rituals give way to simple presence. The living pass through quietly, not afraid, just aware. You notice how the town does not separate itself sharply from death. Burial grounds sit close to homes. Memory stays nearby. A faint breeze moves through the yard, rustling leaves. The sound is calming rather than eerie. Nature does not change behavior because it is night. Beyond the churchyard, the wall looms again. Its surface absorbs darkness, becoming less visible than by day. Guards stand in familiar places, lanterns low, faces mostly in shadow. They speak occasionally, brief murmurs exchanged to confirm wakefulness. Silence is not neglect. It is attention. You realize how much trust the town places in these moments. While most sleep, a few remain alert. Not heroes, just people assigned to stay awake. Near a tower, you see a man seated on a crate, head bowed slightly. For a moment, you think he sleeps. Then he shifts, adjusts his grip on a spear, and continues watching. Rest arrives in fragments here. You turn inward again, walking along a narrow lane that smells faintly of damp wood and old smoke. The smell is not unpleasant. It is familiar, the scent of habitation. A cat slips past your feet, barely touching the ground. It pauses, looks back at you briefly, then disappears into shadow. Animals navigate night without fear. Their confidence feels instructive. You slow further, letting your steps soften. There is no reason to hurry. Nothing waits urgently. Deep night is not for work. It is for endurance. You think of the jobs that resume before dawn. Bakers, watchmen changing shifts, water carriers, cleaners. Preparation begins again soon, but not yet. For now, the town rests as deeply as it can. Somewhere, a dream turns into a sigh. Somewhere else, someone wakes briefly, then sleeps again. These small movements ripple quietly through shared space. You sit once more near the wall, leaning against stone that has cooled fully now. The chill is not sharp, just present. You adjust your position slightly, finding balance. Above you, clouds drift across stars, reshaping the sky slowly. Time stretches. Minutes feel longer here, or perhaps shorter. Measurement loses importance. You feel how the town holds its collective breath during these hours. Not out of fear, but preservation. Energy is conserved. Attention is narrowed. Deep night is when systems prove themselves. Fires remain contained. Doors remain shut. Walls remain intact. Illness does not spread unchecked. No alarm is raised. Success looks like nothing happening. This understanding settles fully now. The medieval town does not chase comfort, protects continuity, and continuity is built in moments like this. Quiet, unremarkable, easily overlooked. You let your shoulders drop. The tension you did not realize you carried releases. Breathing deepens. There is nothing more to observe. The work you came to witness is complete for now. The town keeps itself. You allow your thoughts to drift, no longer anchored to detail. Images blur gently. The soundscape reduces to a low hum. Night deepens a little more, then holds. And in that held stillness you rest fully. The hours before morning feel thinner than the rest of the night. Not darker, not quieter, just lighter in a way that is difficult to name. You feel it in your breathing first. The air shifts, cool but no longer heavy. Stone releases the last of its stored chill. Somewhere far beyond the walls, the horizon prepares itself. The town does not know morning is coming. It senses it. You walk slowly along the inner wall, footsteps careful, not because you fear waking anyone, but because the moment asks for restraint. These hours belong to waiting rather than action. A watchman leans against the wall nearby, eyes half-lidded but alert. He stretches his fingers, rolls his shoulders, and resumes his stance. Fatigue shows, but discipline holds. This is the longest part of the watch. The body wants to rest just as responsibility peaks. He glances at the sky, gauging color rather than stars. Experience teaches what clocks cannot. You move on. In the street below, a door opens briefly, then closes again. Someone steps out to empty a chamber pot quietly into a designated barrel. The task is done without thought, without complaint. Cleanliness does not wait for daylight. Another small system functioning. You hear a low scrape of wood as someone adjusts a shutter that rattled during the night. Correction before complaint. Habit before frustration. The town remains intact. As you walk, you notice small signs of preparation. A broom propped against a wall. A bucket placed near a doorway. Kindling stacked within reach. These objects do not announce intention. They imply it. Morning will need them. Near the well, a figure waits in shadow, bucket resting at their feet. They do not draw water yet. It is too early. Rules still hold. But readiness matters. You realize how much of medieval life exists in this space between permission and need. Waiting becomes a skill. Farther along, you pass a bakehouse where a faint glow leaks through cracks in the door. The oven has been lit again. Dough prepared hours earlier waits its turn. Bakers work before others stir. Inside, hands move by memory rather than sight. Fire breathes steadily. Bread begins another cycle. The smell reaches you softly, promising warmth without demanding attention. You pause and breathe it in, then continue. A rooster calls again, more confidently this time. Another answers closer. The sound spreads and settles, marking the approaching edge of day. You feel the town lean forward slightly, not waking yet, but ready. In a small courtyard, a woman wraps a shawl around her shoulders and sits near the door, eyes closed. She does not sleep. She rests. This pause will not return once the day begins. You understand now that rest here is opportunistic, taken where it fits. When it fits, a man emerges from a stable carrying a lantern that burns low. He extinguishes it carefully rather than letting it die on its own. Control matters even at the end of usefulness. You move toward the gate again. Guards stand ready to open it soon, but not yet. Timing matters. Too early invites trouble. Too late invites anger. One guard rubs his hands together, then stops, as if remembering something. He checks the latch again. Satisfied, he resumes waiting. The sky lightens imperceptibly. Gray shifts to pale blue. Clouds thin. Shapes sharpen at the edges. You feel the moment when night releases its hold. Not suddenly. Not fully. Just enough to allow transition. Inside the town, people stir. A cough. A stretch. A whispered word. Sound begins to return. A child wakes and swings legs off a shared bed. A parent murmurs, guiding them back down for a few more moments. Sleep is rationed carefully. You walk toward the square as light gathers. It looks empty, but you know better now. Emptiness here is temporary. Soon stalls will appear. Voices will rise. Work will resume. You think about how this moment belongs to no one and everyone at once. Between night's vigilance and day's labor. Between rest and effort. The medieval town exists fully in these transitions. You stop walking. For a moment, you simply stand and observe without analyzing. The weight of understanding settles comfortably rather than urgently. You know how this day will unfold. You have already seen it. Not because it repeats exactly, but because it follows the same structure. People will wake. They will work. They will eat. They will prepare. They will rest. And in doing so, they will keep the town alive for another cycle. You feel calm now, grounded. The need to observe has faded. The need to rest remains. The sky brightens a little more. Birds begin tentative calls. The smell of bread strengthens. The gate creaks as it prepares to open. You turn away from the town, not physically but mentally. You let the images soften. The details blur gently. There is nothing left to prove. Nothing left to document. The medieval town continues without you, and you drift comfortably towards sleep, carrying with you the steady rhythm of lives built not on spectacle, but on patience. Morning finally arrives, not as a moment, but as a gradual agreement between light and routine. The sky has softened fully now, pale and steady, and the town accepts it without pause. There is no celebration. There is only motion. You feel it immediately. The quiet waiting of deep night gives way to purposeful sound. Doors open with practiced ease. Footsteps multiply. Voices rise just enough to coordinate rather than converse. The gate opens, which shifts against iron. Hinges complain briefly, then settle. The outside world presses inward again, bringing travelers, carts, news, and uncertainty. Guards step aside, alert but calm. Recognition happens quickly. Suspicion is reserved for what feels unfamiliar. You walk with the flow now, not against it. The town has chosen its direction for the day. Near the bakehouse, the first loaves are already moving into waiting hands. Steam curls upward, visible in the cool air. People break bread immediately, not waiting to reach home. Hunger does not negotiate. A baker wipes his hands, counts coins, and turns back to the oven without looking up. Efficiency is muscle memory. You notice how bodies wake unevenly. Some move quickly, already engaged. Others stretch, shake out stiffness, complain softly before falling into rhythm. Age shows most clearly at this hour. A man pauses to massage his knee before lifting a sack of grain. He does not hesitate long. Pain is expected. Delay is optional. At the well, water flows again. Buckets rise and fall. The sound repeats steadily, grounding. Children assist where they can, learning weight and balance early. You see a woman correct a child's grip without speaking. Teaching happens through touch as much as instruction. The market begins to assemble itself. Stalls appear like memory returning. Cloth laid out, boards propped, baskets opened. Each seller claims familiar space without dispute. Boundaries exist because they are remembered. A fishmonger arrives late, apologizes briefly, and begins setting out his goods. The apology matters more than the delay. You walk past a group of men unloading a cart of firewood. The wood knocks softly as it is stacked. Fuel is counted carefully. No one guesses at quantity. Guessing invites shortage. Nearby, a cooper inspects a barrel returned with a cracked hoop. He nods once, not annoyed. Repair is part of expectation. Failure is not personal here. It is procedural. You follow a street where artisans begin work. Hammers ring, saws bite, fires roar to life. The soundscape builds layer by layer, never overwhelming, just present. A smith tests the heat of his forge, adjusting airflow. He does not rush. Rushing ruins metal. An apprentice pumps bellows steadily, eyes fixed on flame. He has learned when to increase, when to pause. Instruction has already become instinct. You notice how much labor depends on anticipation. Hands prepare before need arises. Tools are placed within reach. Materials are sorted in advance. This town runs on readiness. As the sun climbs higher, light fills narrow spaces that were shadowed earlier. Color returns to walls. Faces become more readable. Expressions settle into familiar patterns. A woman counts eggs again before selling them. She frowns slightly, adjusts the arrangement, then smiles for the customer. Presentation returns with daylight. You pause near a tailor's shop where fabric catches the sun briefly, glowing softly. The tailor adjusts its position, then nods. Light reveals flaws. Better to see them now. A subtle truth settles again. Morning is for correction. Afternoon is for endurance. You walk toward the church where bells ring once more, longer this time. Morning prayer begins. Attendance increases slightly, then thins again as work calls louder. Faith fits around labor rather than replacing it. Inside, candles burn despite daylight. Habit matters more than necessity. You step away and follow a narrow lane where waste collectors begin their rounds. Barrels are checked. Lids secured. Routes planned. The unpleasant work resumes without complaint. Yesterday's cleanliness must be renewed. You see a man wrinkle his nose, then continue. Discomfort does not stop duty. Further on, children carry messages between workshops, earning small coins. They move quickly, weaving through adults without apology. Their work makes coordination possible. You realize how many tasks here exist solely to connect others. Carrying, announcing, delivering, linking effort. A town crier clears his throat in the square, preparing to speak again. Notices must be repeated to become real. He waits for attention before beginning. When he speaks, heads turn automatically. Words travel. Meaning spreads. You feel the town settle into its full daytime rhythm now. The earlier softness has been replaced by momentum. Everything moves, but nothing rushes. The systems you observed through night and transition now operate openly, without secrecy. What was hidden becomes visible. What was quiet becomes audible. Yet nothing feels new. That is the final understanding. This day is not special. And that is why it matters. The medieval town survives because most days are like this. Predictable, demanding, manageable. You slow your pace and let the noise blur gently, no longer tracking each task. The pattern holds without your attention. You know what will happen next. Lunch will come. Fatigue will build. Evening will return. Night will fold itself back over stone and wood. The cycle will continue. You feel no urgency to follow further. The town does not need observation now. It needs participation, and you have already given enough. You step aside mentally, letting the images soften once more. The soundscape fades into a steady hum. Movement becomes background. You breathe evenly, deeply. The medieval town continues its work, and you drift comfortably back toward rest, carrying the rhythm with you. As the day advances, a different quality settles over the town. Not urgency, not excitement, weariness. It does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates, in shoulders, in hands, in the slight delay between thought and movement. You feel it everywhere now. Work continues, but posture changes. People lean more. They pause longer before lifting. Conversations shorten. Efficiency gives way to conservation. This is not failure. This is endurance. You walk past a mason adjusting stones along a low wall. His movements are slower than earlier, but more precise. Fatigue sharpens attention rather than dulling it. He sets each stone carefully, knowing he will not want to redo this work tomorrow. Nearby, a woman repairs a tear in a sack rather than replacing it. Her needle moves steadily, puncturing fabric that has already served many seasons. Replacement is expensive. Repair is practical. The town lives in repair. You notice it everywhere now that you are looking for it. Shoes resoled, handles rewrapped, pots patched, clothing reworked to fit new bodies. Nothing is allowed to fail completely if it can be prevented. A man sits on a low step sharpening a tool that no longer holds an edge easily. He does not complain. He adjusts technique. More strokes, less pressure. Patience replaces force. You understand that durability here is not a property of objects. It is a behavior. You pass a cart stopped mid-street while its axle is examined. Two men crouch beside it, discussing quietly. One points, the other nods. They do not argue. Diagnosis comes before blame. They lift the cart slightly, wedge wood beneath, test again. The fix is temporary, but sufficient. Movement resumes. The day does not pause for perfection. You walk toward a shaded area near the wall where workers rest briefly. Some sit. Some lie back against stone. No one sleeps deeply. This is borrowed rest, not surrender. A woman massages her wrists. A man stretches his back. Another stares into space for a few moments before standing again. You notice how rest here is strategic, taken just long enough to restore function, never long enough to invite stiffness. You continue on and pass a group of children practicing small tasks under light supervision, carrying water, sorting tools, watching closely, learning not from instruction, but imitation. Their energy contrasts sharply with adult weariness. Movement is easier in young bodies. Responsibility will weigh on them soon enough. A subtle truth emerges. Fatigue is not hidden here. It is expected. It is managed rather than cured. As afternoon deepens, light grows harsher. Shadows sharpen again. Heat builds slightly against stone. You see people adjust. Hats pulled lower. Sleeves loosened. Work slows marginally to match conditions. A baker checks remaining loaves and begins planning for tomorrow. Dough will be prepared tonight. The cycle never breaks fully. You pass a woman airing blankets outside a door, turning them carefully. Sun and air cleanse when water is scarce. She watches the sky, judging how long she has. The town works constantly with limits. Time, energy, materials, weather. And within those limits, it persists. You walk toward the river again, where labor feels heavier now. The current moves steadily, indifferent to human fatigue. Fishermen pull nets with practiced strain, faces tight with effort. They do not rush. Rushing tears nets. Patience preserves them. One man pauses, breathes deeply, then resumes. His partner adjusts position without comment. Cooperation adapts to weariness. You stand nearby, feeling the rhythm slow and deepen. This is not the productive energy of mourning. This is the sustaining energy of experience. The town has learned how to last. You walk back toward the center and notice small acts of care unfolding quietly. A woman offers water to a passing worker. A man takes over a task without being asked. A child carries a tool back to its place. These moments are unremarkable. That is their strength. You feel the weight of the day settling into the town's collective posture. Evening will come soon. Supper will follow. Rest will be earned. But for now, the town continues, slightly bent, slightly tired, still functioning. You slow your pace, matching it. The soundscape shifts again. Fewer sharp noises. More steady ones. Footsteps. Breathing. Tools meeting material without force. You pass a man repairing a roof tile loosened by wind. He works carefully, knowing that fatigue increases risk. One mistake could injure him badly. He pauses often, checks balance, continues. Survival here depends on knowing when to slow. A small but important understanding settles fully now. Strength is not constant here. It is managed. The medieval town survives because it respects weariness rather than denying it. You feel your own energy mirror this pattern. Thoughts slow. Analysis softens. Observation becomes presence. You stop near a familiar corner and lean against the wall. Stone supports you without complaint. You breathe and feel steadiness return. The town does the same. Soon, bells will ring again. Evening will approach. The day's work will fold inward once more. For now, the town holds itself upright through habit, cooperation, and the quiet art of repair. You let your eyes rest on the movement around you without following each detail. Nothing needs to be captured. Everything is already continuing. Evening approaches once more, not as an interruption, but as a soft release. The town does not resist it. Shoulders lower again. Movements lose their edge. The effort of lasting gives way to the need to recover. You feel the shift before you see it. Light warms briefly as the sun drops, then thins, stretching shadows across streets that have carried the day's weight without complaint. Stone glows softly, then dulls. Wood creaks as temperatures change. Work begins to fold inward. Shops do not close all at once. One door shuts, then another. Tools are wiped clean and set aside. Fires are reduced. Accounts are counted with less urgency than earlier, but with care. You pass a cooper rolling a barrel into storage, his movements slower now, but no less deliberate. He tests the wedge one last time before turning away. Tomorrow can wait. A baker sweeps flour from the threshold, gathering it carefully. Waste is minimized even in fatigue. The broom moves steadily, rhythm replacing speed. You notice how often people pause now, not to rest fully, but to breathe. These pauses lengthen as evening settles. Conversation resumes in fragments rather than exchanges. A woman stands in a doorway watching the street, not for anything in particular, just allowing the day to end. She adjusts her shawl as the air cools and steps inside without looking back. Children are called home again. Their voices carry briefly, then disappear behind walls. Play gives way to routine without argument. Bodies are tired. Hunger helps. You follow the familiar pull of cooking smells as evening meals begin again. Pots return to hearths. Ladles stir. Bread is broken. The day's labor dissolves into nourishment. Inside one home, you glimpse a family seated close together. Food is shared carefully. Conversation is sparse. Eating takes precedence. Words can wait. A man rubs his hands near the fire, then stretches his fingers slowly. His joints complain quietly. He ignores it. You move on, letting these scenes pass without attachment. Evening is repetition, and repetition is comfort. Near the square, the town crier's board is empty again. Notices removed. Tomorrow's concerns not yet posted. The space rests. You hear laughter from a tavern, muted by closing shutters. Ale flows more slowly now. Stories repeat themselves. Voices soften rather than rise. A man stumbles slightly as he steps outside, then steadies himself against the wall. A companion waits until balance returns before moving on. Care appears quietly. You realize how different this feels from morning. No one rushes. No one competes. The day's hierarchy flattens under fatigue. A guard lights the first torch of evening. Fire returns in controlled form. Light marks paths again. Shadow resumes its role. You walk toward the gate, now closed. The outside world recedes. The town contracts, focusing on what is inside its walls. Guards exchange brief words and settle into position. The rhythm of night watch prepares itself again. You stand nearby and feel the shift fully now. The town has crossed the threshold back into evening. The day has been absorbed. Somewhere a bell rings. The sound is softer than in the morning. It does not call. It acknowledges. You move along a narrow street where water is poured over stone to settle dust. Steam rises faintly, then vanishes. Cleanliness is reset for night. A woman checks a latch twice before closing her door. A man banks a hearth fire carefully. A child yawns and leans against a wall, eyes half closed. These gestures repeat everywhere. Small acts of closure. You think about how much medieval life depends on endings done properly. Fires banked. Doors secured. Tools stored. Bodies fed. Nothing is left unfinished without consequence. As the light fades further, the town grows quieter again. Sound compresses. Movement becomes purposeful once more. You feel the familiar calm return. Evening has done its work. You find yourself near the wall again, drawn there by habit now rather than curiosity. The stone still holds a trace of warmth. You lean against it and breathe slowly. The sky deepens. Clouds stretch thin across fading blue. Stars prepare to reappear. You realize something gently without effort. You have watched the town complete a full cycle. From night to dawn. From dawn to labor. From labor to weariness. From weariness back to night. Nothing extraordinary happened. And yet everything necessary did. This is the true shape of medieval life. Not spectacle but continuity. Not drama but endurance. You feel no need to analyze further. Understanding has settled into the body rather than the mind. The town no longer needs observation. It needs rest. And so do you. The torches flicker. Shadows lengthen. Night steps forward once more. You let your eyes close gently, trusting the systems you have already seen hold through the dark. The town keeps itself, and you drift with it into quiet. The afternoon light has softened without you noticing. Not dramatically, not with any sudden shift, but gradually, the way tired eyes adjust when they finally stop straining. The town is still alive, still working, still breathing through its many small routines, but the urgency has thinned. The sharp edges of labor have dulled into repetition. What once demanded attention now simply continues. You walk again through streets you recognize. Not because they have changed, but because you have. The gutters still carry what they carried before. The stones still bear the same scars. But the shock is gone. The reflexive flinch has faded. You no longer step aside in panic. You step aside in understanding. That change matters more than anything else you have learned tonight. A cooper rolls a barrel across the square, guiding it with his foot, steady and unhurried. He does not rush. There is time now. The baker wipes his hands on his apron and leans briefly against the doorframe, watching customers drift in and out. The blacksmith's hammer slows, strikes spaced farther apart, each blow deliberate rather than urgent. Work has not ended. It has settled. This is the rhythm medieval life trains into the body. Not speed. Endurance. You pass a well where water-bearers gather, their voices low, familiar with one another. The arguments of the morning have softened into small jokes, shared fatigue. Buckets clink gently. Ropes slide through calloused hands with practiced ease. Nothing heroic happens here. Nothing dramatic. And yet, without this exact repetition, the town would unravel within days. Children pass you carrying scraps, running messages, sweeping thresholds. Their movements are smaller now, slower, hunger and tiredness beginning to outweigh excitement. They have learned when to push and when to yield. That lesson arrives early in this world. You notice how many jobs fade into invisibility as the day progresses. The night workers are gone now, sleeping through daylight heat. The gong farmers rest beyond the walls. The leech collectors clean their tools. The rat catchers retreat into shade. Their absence is itself evidence of success. When the work disappears, it means it worked. You move past the churchyard again. It looks ordinary now. Sunlight touches stone. Birds hop between markers. The weight you felt earlier has lifted slightly, not because death has lessened, but because it has been folded back into the background where this town keeps it during the day. Ritual completed. Bodies buried or moved. Grief contained enough to allow survival to continue. This containment is not cruelty. It is necessity. You think again of the executioner, not at his platform now, but walking home, tools cleaned, roll shed until needed again. You think of the sin-eater moving quietly through streets where no one greets him, carrying a burden that never fully empties. You think of the plague workers, marked not by clothing, but by memory, and how the town will forget them the moment danger recedes. For a moment, the temptation arises to judge this world, to label it harsh, unforgiving, brutal. But the longer you stand here, the harder that judgment becomes. This town is not indifferent. It is practical. There is compassion here, but it is distributed differently. It does not linger. It does not announce itself. It moves quickly, does what it must, and steps aside so the next task can happen. Comfort is brief. Survival is constant. You sit on a low stone wall near the edge of the market. The stone is still warm. Heat stored from hours of sunlight releases slowly into your body. Feels grounding. Merchants begin packing away goods that will not sell today. Others adjust prices downward, hoping to move what remains. Nothing is wasted if it can be helped. Waste is a failure the town cannot afford. As you rest, you realize something quietly profound. None of the people you observe tonight would describe their work as strange. That word belongs to distance. It belongs to centuries of removal, to modern separation from consequence. Here everything is close. The body, the refuse, the danger, the need. There is no room for abstraction. Jobs emerge because problems exist. They remain because the problems persist. The fullers do not stamp cloth because it is unpleasant. They do it because cold kills. The tanners endure rot because bare feet suffer without leather. The lime burners burn stone because walls must stand. The beekeepers risk stings because darkness without candles is deeper than night alone. You breathe slowly, matching the tempo of the town. The urge to keep moving fades. There is nowhere left you need to go to understand this place. You have seen enough. The patterns are clear now. Above you, clouds drift lazily, unconcerned with the work below. Time moves on without acknowledgement. The town does not chase it. It adapts. You stand again and begin walking, not toward another trade, not toward another lesson, but toward rest. The streets guide you naturally now. You no longer need to think about where to place your feet. That, perhaps, is the final lesson of the day. The medieval world does not overwhelm because it is cruel. It overwhelms because it is honest. And honesty, when sustained without pause, is exhausting. The sun begins its slow descent, shadows stretching once more, preparing the town for its next shift. You feel no urgency to follow. Others will take over. They always do. You have walked far enough. The light changes again almost without permission. Afternoon loosens into evening, and the town responds instinctively. Shutters close halfway. Fires are coaxed back to life. The air cools just enough to remind bodies that another cycle is beginning. You feel it too, a gentle pull toward stillness. This is how medieval life survives itself. Not through triumph, but through repetition that never quite breaks. You walk once more along the main street, now quieter, slower, the noise of commerce giving way to domestic sounds. Pots clink, doors close, voices soften. Somewhere a child resists sleep and loses. Somewhere an animal settles into straw. The town is folding inward, layer by layer. You realize that nothing dramatic ends your journey. There is no final spectacle, no grand conclusion. That too is honest. The medieval world does not resolve. Continues. The strange jobs you encounter do not disappear when daylight fades. They wait. They return. They rotate through hands and generations. Sons replace fathers. Apprentices replace masters. The work persists even as faces change. That persistence is the town's true architecture. Stone walls crumble. Roofs burn. Records fade. But routines survive because they must. Every unpleasant task you witnessed exists because removing it would collapse something else. You pause at the edge of town where the fields begin. The smell here is cleaner. Earth, grass, distant animals. You understand now how tightly bound town and countryside are. Waste becomes fertilizer. Labor becomes food. Food becomes labor again. Nothing ends. It only changes form. You think of the night soil trader guiding his cart into darkness, carrying the town's unwanted remnants toward tomorrow's harvest. You think of the beekeeper closing hives carefully, knowing exactly how much to take and when to stop. You think of the matchmaker, storing names and secrets quietly, shaping futures without ceremony. Even belief follows this pattern. Faith is not abstract here. It is functional. It soothes grief. It structures fear. It gives language to what cannot be fixed. Whether or not it is correct matters less than whether it helps people endure. You feel your breathing slow. Your shoulders loosen. The sharpness you felt at the beginning of the walk has softened into something closer to understanding. This town does not ask you to admire it. It asks you to accept it. You begin to understand why medieval people rarely describe their lives in extremes. Surviving letters and accounts do not overflow with outrage or despair. They speak of weather, of work, of illness, of payment. Life is described as something navigated, not conquered. Modern distance tempts you to view this world as unbearable. And yet people lived here, loved here, laughed here, slept deeply after exhausting days. The human capacity to normalize difficulty is not weakness. It is adaptation. As the sky darkens, the first stars appear, faint but steady. The bell rings again, marking time not as something lost, but something organized. Curfew approaches. The town prepares to hand itself back to the night workers, to the quiet labor that keeps disease, waste, and disorder from accumulating unchecked. You step away from the street, no longer following individuals, but sensing the system as a whole. A living network of necessity, compromise, and quiet resilience. This is what history looks like when stripped of crowns and battles. It looks like hands, repetition, fatigue, care taken in small, uncelebrated ways. You no longer feel the need to judge which jobs were worst or strangest or hardest. Those distinctions lose meaning here. Every role exists because something must be done. Refusal is not a moral stance in this world. It is a risk. The town grows quieter still. Fires dim, footsteps thin. Somewhere, far off, a cart creaks softly, already beginning tomorrow's unseen work. You allow yourself to stop walking. There is nothing left to learn tonight. The medieval town does not demand your attention anymore. It holds itself together without you. That knowledge is oddly comforting. It means you can rest. The images begin to soften. The smells fade. The sounds stretch and blur, turning into a low, even hum. Your body remembers stillness. Your mind follows. This world will be here again if you return. The jobs will still exist. The rhythms will still turn. For now, you are allowed to step out of time. Let the town keep breathing on its own. Let the work continue without witnesses. And let yourself drift, knowing that long before you, and long after you, ordinary people have always found ways to carry the weight of the world quietly, one task at a time. The night settles fully now. Nothing is required of you. Sleep,